World Health Day, celebrated annually on April 7th, is a global initiative led by the World Health Organization to raise awareness about pressing health issues. This year's theme, Investing in Health for a Better Future, emphasizes the importance of leveraging resources and technology to foster sustainable health systems and improve overall well-being. A key component to achieving this is the effective use and sharing of data. BC Platforms, a global leader in real-world data, is helping to empower healthcare, biotech, and pharmaceutical organizations in addressing unmet medical needs. Their platform handles and integrates genomic and other data sources at scale, producing analysis-ready data. This, in turn, provides meaningful insights, enabling patients to access treatment faster, reducing costs for healthcare providers, and assisting scientists and drug designers in gaining better knowledge on the incidence and prevalence of diseases. However, there are real concerns when it comes to data sharing, and regulations differ from country to country. To address this, BC Platforms has created a Trusted Collaboration Environment, or TCE, which ensures that organizations can share real-world data with researchers globally while adhering to their local regulatory and privacy requirements. A TCE works by allowing a data custodian, typically a biobank or a scientific entity, to share their collection of data with other academic researchers in a safe and regulated manner, without moving or copying. By fostering collaboration, innovation, and equity, BC Platforms is poised to make a lasting impact on global health. Today, we are joined by Paul Smith, UK Business Development Director at BC Platforms, to discuss how data can help improve global health outcomes. So, Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. And could you please tell us initially, in as much detail as you can, how can BC Platforms support the WHO's goals for World Health Day and beyond?
Well, thank you, Will, for inviting me along to this. Yes, I think that this is very important. What we'd like to do is really place the patient at the center of care, of personalized medicine, and really making their data more accessible through a secure, trusted collaboration environment, or a secure data environment, which can only be accessed by approved researchers who are developing drugs of the future. So really, the world of healthcare has dramatically changed over the last few years. We call it the personalized medicine revolution, and really it is trying to put that patient at the center of care. Their data, their real world evidence, data that you can collect from wearables. All this data is very important for future drug development. But, we're aware of the security aspects of that and the personal nature of data. So we as a software and computer company have developed this trusted collaboration environment, which really allows the patient data to be securely stored and made accessible to approved researchers who are trying to develop drugs of the future. And one of the important aspects of this is that it could be much more cost effective, much more efficient for future drugs, making drugs much less costly, but also personalized medicine means it can be targeted. So we're looking at drugs to develop for very rare diseases or for cancers. So it's a very exciting world that we're in, and really what we're trying to do is put the patient at the center of that.
Great answer. Thanks, Paul. And why is it so important to data share and also research collaboratively?
It's incredibly important. We've come through the COVID pandemic 2 years ago, and we were very much part of that initiative. We were approached very quickly to establish what we call this trusted collaboration environment for COVID data here in the UK, and it really meant that we we had to bring in all the COVID data that was being created globally or in the UK here, and make it accessible to all the researchers, clinical clinicians, doctors, clinical trials, to really facilitate the development of the COVID vaccine, as it happened with Oxford University and AstraZeneca. But it meant that there were lots of data being produced across the UK, but it was much more important that it was made accessible to all the researchers. And so this trusted collaboration environment, or co-connect as it became called, was incredibly important because it facilitated access from research from the NHS, government, academia, industry, to collaboratively respond to this pandemic very quickly, very efficiently, and it really facilitated the whole vaccine development, and really the development of the vaccine was shortened to 9 months. Quite typically, a vaccine would take 5 to 10 years. So you can see that the ability to pull together assets or cohorts of data from multiple sources into this trusted collaborative environment really facilitated the shortening of that vaccine development and rollout. And post COVID, we now there's really we can do that for drug development as well. We've proven that actually this kind of technology in the right place, in the right hands, could be shortening drug discovery quite dramatically. So it would reduce the costs of drug development, reduce the cost of drugs, and also could be targeted. So you could create a cohort of data which was specific to a particular rare disease or a particular cancer. So the COVID project was probably one of the most inspiring projects that we've been involved in globally, and really post-COVID, all the learnings from it have been very exciting. It's certainly here in the UK, we're now talking about secure data environments, which is really what we call trusted collaborative environments. So these are being rolled out now, and this is all part of Data Saves Lives initiative that the government is initiating. So we all know that data is essentially saving lives, as we did with COVID.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the enormous achievement of the scientific community during such a challenging period.
Oh, absolutely. And it's been acknowledged by everybody, the community, I hope by the general public, but certainly by the scientific community. And, Sir Patrick Vallance reported to the UK government steering committee, and he highlighted the fact that and stressed the importance of data, the access to data, the data flows, the data systems to support the pandemic response. So, it's been acknowledged, right up to the top of government and the chief scientific officer that, the data and the access to data is incredibly important, but acknowledging that, data is sensitive, it's personal. So, you have to take precautions, the right IT precautions, the data access procedures to make sure that your data isn't compromised, that it's held in a secure environment. And post-COVID, your data, certainly here in the UK, will be held in these secure data environments held by the NHS. So it's the NHS who are the data custodians of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. And what measures can be taken to ensure data privacy and security while promoting data sharing among stakeholders?
Well, it's incredibly important, that I think that's the top of the list that all of us are working towards is with the new European initiatives of GDPR and the sensitivity around data generally. Patient data, healthcare data is probably the most important. data asset. And so security is completely fundamental. It's the top of the list of everything that we do. It's the top list of all our clients. So it's very important that we continue to protect confidentiality of information. And we can do that in a variety of ways, but fundamentally it's making sure that the data is held in an appropriate, secure environment, as we call it, the secure data environment. But as important is that data access. Who do you give access to that data to? And they have to be approved researchers, whether they be in government, NHS, academia, or the private sector. But we so top of the list is that privacy. There are technologies now that facilitate identifying that data and anonymizing the data. And I think, the added security of putting it into these secure data environments or these trusted collaboration environments facilitates, and we hope facilitates the more access to this, very important healthcare that patients have. And it's incredibly important that we get more and more access to that data, because that will improve health outcomes. And so I think the environment or the technology is in alignment with the regulations that are in place now, should give confidence to patients that their data is secure.
And also the remarkable collaborative effort over the pandemic really drove technology in healthcare forward in quite a meaningful sense, didn't it?
Yes, I mean, I think the UK is on the bleeding edge of some of these sort of technologies, and I think the COVID example is one of those one of those key examples of really everybody coming together in a pandemic and following the regulations, etc., that are appropriate, but really coming together, whether it's from the private or public or NHS sectors, government, academia, and pulling together in this particular project we were involved in, which was called Co-Connect. And it was one of those once in a lifetime moments, wasn't it? And I think all of us were excited about it and still are excited about it, that by pulling all this data together, we facilitated the fast turnaround of getting particularly the Oxford University and AstraZeneca vaccine approved, and it was all down to quickly facilitating this technology environment, this trusted research environment that the data is held in, and making that data available very, very quickly to the people involved in the COVID vaccine, and making it available 24/7, and having regulators, government, anybody looking at that data. So I think that was a particularly exciting project and facilitated the rollout of the UK AstraZeneca vaccine earlier than anticipated. And was made globally available, obviously, to the world. So it's from that aspect, I think we certainly saved millions of lives, I think, through that initiative. And I think that then one of the aspects that we were always thinking about, and I know the COVID vaccine task force were very keen about, was not only the rollout of the vaccine, but actually the legacy of this project. And one of the aspects of legacy was to make us ready for the next pandemic. We're going to get another pandemic in the future. So it's putting in place the infrastructure that we need to be ready for that. And again, data is right at the center of that. And so there's been a couple of initiatives here in the UK to facilitate that. There's the Data Saves Lives initiative, but there's something called Data for R&D. So we learned from the COVID project that collaborative arrangements work. So the Data for R&D is an initiative run by the UK government to make NHS data much more available. Now, here in the UK, we're quite unique. We have a 60 million cohort of data, which is the largest data set in the world. And, it's our learnings from the COVID project meant that we could actually set up through the Gold Data Curve review and the necessity within the NHS to set up these secure data environments. So at the moment, we're involved in supporting 11 regional secure data environments, very similar to the trusted collaboration environments that we set up for COVID. And so we're very, very much involved in that. It's very much a legacy project from the COVID project, but it will mean that the UK will be ready very shortly to be able to allow access to one of the richest cohorts of data in the world, 60 million records, from birth to death, primary, secondary, tertiary, longitudinal data. We have the richest genetic information of any population as well. It's quite diverse as a population. So I think that particularly is a very exciting project. It's run by the NHS transformation team, Data for R&D, and we're right at the heart of that. And that I would say is partly due to the successes of the COVID project, and acknowledging that we have the technology now, and if we can make the 60 million cohort available, we could certainly reduce the cost of drugs. We could target drugs more specifically to rare disease and cancers. So UK is leading the world on this.
Great answer. And I suppose, future epidemics, pandemics are inevitable, given the enormous efforts that were made during COVID. Do you think that we are prepared for the next one?
Well, we hope so. And I think, the data is certainly going to help us with this, and potentially even tracking the next pandemic a little bit better perhaps than we did with COVID. But that the legacy aspects, the UK government certainly is very keen about ensuring that we're ready for the next one, and there's no doubt there will be a next one. But I think COVID has facilitated a lot of this, making data available, and it's one of those aspects that we haven't shortcut anything. We're not shortcutting the patient confidentiality or patient data, but we're certainly fast tracking now the technology to really try and fast track drug development, which we all know is very, very expensive, and drugs have become more and more increasingly expensive. So I think if we can facilitate, as we've learned from the COVID vaccine, we've shortened from 5 years to 9 months. If we can do that with drug discovery, then we're saving millions, if not billions of pounds in terms of drug development. So, that's quite exciting. And that's probably, that's been facilitated by the learnings from what we've achieved with COVID.
Well, exactly. And I suppose given the sheer cost, complexity, and often duration of the process of drug development, it's truly remarkable that the vaccines were brought to market safely and effectively in such an efficient time. Real world-leading stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things which I think is quite important here as well is, the trust of the pharmaceutical companies or private sector here. I do think, I listened to Kate Bingham recently, who led the COVID vaccine task force, and one of her primary learnings from this was, to really have achieved that is a combination of private and public sector engagement and collaboration, and really, we need to get to that kind of trust that the patients are trusting the pharmaceutical companies, who, after all, are developing the drugs to help them in their healthcare and their outcomes. So it's that relationship that we're trying to build here. These trusted collaboration environments are hopefully facilitating that trust, that there's an element of that if I share my data, or if I make my data accessible to a pharmaceutical company who are developing the drug, then I'm going to get a benefit from that. The COVID story was clearly quite straightforward, because they had a vaccine at the end of it. But certainly by sharing your data, you're going to get a drug much more quicker, much more cheaper, and hopefully more targeted to you as an individual and to your particular disease.
Great, thank you, Paul. And how can capacity building promote data diversity and also global health equity?
Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly important. And again, if I give the example of the COVID vaccine, obviously everybody's aware that AstraZeneca and Oxford, one of their primary aims was to facilitate that global reach of the vaccine and make it equitable across the globe at cost. And again, I think the drug development needs to be developed is a global healthcare aspect. And I think, it's important that we try and facilitate this access to drugs across the world equally. And I think we can facilitate that by these collaborative, trusted environments where you're collaborating between different global countries in a secure environment. And I think, within these environments, not only are we sharing data, but we're sharing knowledge and expertise and how to analyze the data and make data accessible. And I think these kind of relationships that you build collaboratively across the world will facilitate this global health equity and improve the diversity of data. At the moment, primarily the data tends to be European, white, Caucasian. So, it's incredibly important in the future that in drug development that we target drugs in specific locations globally, which have different genetic makeups that mean that drugs may not work in some areas of the globe and some drugs do. So again, this world healthcare facilitates that we need to make it much more equitable. And I think these sort of trusted collaboration environments would facilitate that.
Excellent. And what role do public-private partnerships play in accelerating the implementation of data-driven healthcare solutions?
Yes, I think just expanding on my points before, I think with the COVID projects, that it's incredibly important that we do have this public-private partnership, because it's certainly with the COVID vaccine, it was the only way that we could ever have got the vaccine developed. It could never have been in the public sector. There needs to be this proper private-public engagement and relationship. And I think the COVID story gives a good example of that truly you can come together and solve a particular pandemic solution that we were faced with. And I know following on from that, there's been lots of discussion, certainly here in the UK, about how we promote and facilitate that much more widely than we do. And how do we make the patient or the public much more aware of the importance of this public-private relationship, that we're not talking about the pharmaceutical companies running off with your data anymore and making vast profits. I think it's truly a collaborative environment that we're setting up here, and a collaboration between public and private. It works both ways, and I think COVID gives a very good example of how it can be very successful.
And I suppose personalised medicine, as well as being hugely empowering for the individual, will also potentially have something of a preventative effect, which will relieve the much burdened NHS potentially.
Yes, absolutely well. And, again, one of the key aspects of the NHS is preventative medicine at the moment. And whether you take the initiative privately, which you should do, it is good. I know publicly the NHS is putting a lot more investment in preventative aspects, whether it be pre-screening or having a regular screen or a regular blood test. All of these, a preventative medicine approach or personalized medicine approach is much better than getting finding out you've got a particular disease that may be too late. So changing your lifestyle or being aware of something before it happens is obviously much more important to you as an individual, but more importantly to the NHS and the public sector. It's saving millions, billions of pounds, preventing disease in the first place.
Fantastic. And what are some of the long-term implications of data-driven healthcare on the global health landscape?
Yes, absolutely. And I think hopefully I've explained a little bit about where data comes in here. It's an important driver to healthcare, and the long-term aspects hopefully are pretty clear. I think hopefully they can be much more cost-effective drugs that are developed, that they're much more speedier to come to the market than, as we talked about, 20 or 30 years of development. But I think more importantly, some of the personalized aspects are key here, that they could be targeted medicines to you as an individual, which would primarily, the drugs would work better for you as a targeted medicine. And also the rare diseases. We talk about rare disease as if it is rare, but actually each individual, the number of rare diseases is in the thousands. So actually, there are a large percentage of the population who suffer from a particular rare disease, and at the moment, we're not able to help those individuals. And I think this data-driven initiative and the way that this personalized medicine revolution is happening now, we could then solve these rare diseases for people globally. And the biggest disease out there is cancer. And I think again, the targeted approach to cancer through a data-driven approach is beginning to see results. So we're very excited about the cancer aspect of this as well.
And I mean, I know you guys are very much leading edge in terms of oncology, and potentially these innovations could have a really transformative impact on the current cancer care backlog.
Absolutely, yes. And we're part of an initiative here in the UK called the Lung Cancer Initiative, early prevention of lung cancer through screening, but also using RNA and DNA analysis to try and pick up the cancer much earlier, pick up the marker much earlier. And again, it comes back to preventative medicine, but it also comes back to how you can pick up data very early and how you can analyze that data and make judgments about picking up that cancer earlier than you would have.
Excellent, thank you, Paul. And could you give us an overview and also a bit of a breakdown of the technology?
Yeah, so we call it the trusted collaboration platform that we've developed over a number of years, but it's a secure cloud-based environment. So it's primarily hosted in the cloud. The important aspect to it is that it's always held and controlled by the data custodian. So whoever owns the data or who's created the data never moves from that environment or that cloud. So there is never a data copy made, or the data never moves from the secure environment that it's stored in. And so that is incredibly important. And the major aspect, I suppose, in it is the data access. We call it getting approval to access that data. So there are a number of steps that an approved researcher would need to go through to get access to certain data. And for example, they would have to come up with some proper scientific project or project idea that they might have that would be independently approved by the data custodian. So we facilitate that as a technology provider, and really we set up the environment. We make that data access approval process straightforward, and we become, I suppose, the data processors. So we facilitate the ability of approved researchers, to access that data and then bring their analytics to the data. And I think, importantly, what we've done in the past is bring data to the analytics. What's happening right now is bringing the analytics to the data and facilitating that. So we facilitate the ability to researchers to allow their algorithms to run inside this trusted collaboration environment through a platform that we provide, and the security that algorithm is protected within that secure environment as well. And then results are simply allowed out, but not the data. So the data still remains in that environment. And then one of the key aspects that we've developed is something called trusted collaboration environment workspaces, where within the environment, you can set up a workspace and work collaboratively with multiple researchers. So this is where the aspect of collaboration comes from, is the allowance of multiple users, approved users, to be able to come into a specific workspace with specific data and run their own specific algorithms within that workspace. So we have this new technology which we call workspaces, which facilitates that and allows collaboration between global researchers within this secure data environment.
Great conversation, and I was thinking how much it ties in with things I've heard from other conversations with researchers who were hugely pleased with the open and collaborative nature of information sharing during the pandemic for a really common good.
That's absolutely right, and I think hopefully we don't need another pandemic to prove that collaboration is incredibly important, and research has always been built on collaboration. But actually, if you think about it, researchers have been a little bit siloed. They've been a little bit protective of their own data. Once the research is done and the paper is published, typically the data is lost because the grant money doesn't retain that data in the university's environment. So we've had no legacy of data in the past. We've lost data because of projects finishing, and I think this trusted research environment has legacy because it can be maintained in the future, and it can be used for the future and in future research projects as well. So I think there's an element to that as well, that we've got. Researchers have always hoped to work together globally on various solutions, but I think this trusted research environment, facilitates that much more now.
Paul Smith, UK Business Development Director at BC Platforms, thank you so much. And for those listening who'd like to find out more, please visit bcplatforms.com.